You're listening to Death's Twilight, a podcast novel written by A.J. Levins, performed by the author and a full cast, including Mike Nelson, Tara Pierce Singh, Ryan Lintner, Kaylee Romaine, Connie Levins, and Joshua Meyer. For more information on this podcast, please head to MeechanChronicles.com. This podcast is suitable for ages 12 and up and may contain scenes of violence. Listener discretion is advised. Previously on Death's Twilight.
Target is Randy Emery Herman. Target date December 4th, 2308, 12:03 and 12 seconds p.m. local time. Do not be late.
You destroyed 2 practice dummies. You're going to be the best one day, Slade. I can see you being an alpha.
Flight early. Be at terminal in 25 minutes.
No one wanted to be connected with an emissary. An emissary meant change. Narang Residence, Siam, December 3rd, 2308, 14:35:18. T-minus 15 minutes, 13 seconds. Hotaru Kogame smiled. Her target, BJ Narang, was in the corner cafe having coffee, completely oblivious to his surroundings. From the look of the liquid visible from the top of the cup, it was a Kona blend, one of her favorites. Still, she would have to wait until after the delivery to enjoy one of her few vices. She pulled the tablet from her pack, checking the photos supplied by Control to ensure she had the right man. Placing the binoculars on the desk in front of her, she began to leaf through the papers on his desk. The usual bills, receipts, and letters were neatly arranged by date and supplier.
He's really organized.
Looking through the binoculars again, she watched as he paid his bill, rose, and headed toward her. She grabbed the tablet from the table, opened the recognition program, and prepared her tablet for delivery. She moved to the front room and took a seat in the leather armchair by the door. She didn't have to wait long. The sound of keys in the lock was music to her ears. The door opened with a soft squeak of hinges, and BJ walked through the threshold.
BJ Narang?
Hotaru's voice was soft and musical. BJ stopped dead in his tracks. How did
I get in here? I have my ways. Mr. BJ Narang, you've been served.
She stood, thrusting the tablet into his hands, causing him to drop his newspaper on the floor. A small chirp emanated from the tablet as his fingerprints were recognized. He looked down at the tablet, trying to read the text on the screen in front of him. The tablet's retinal scanners engaged, and BJ slumped to the ground, the tablet falling to the ground beside his now prone body. Her chronometer chirped twice, recording the time of delivery. She looked and was pleased to note more than 10 minutes remaining. She would get a bonus for this job. An extra day's vacation, perhaps? She glanced at the screen lying beside BJ. The screen now showed the main screen, with its rows of icons for easy access. She picked up her tablet and strode quietly out of the room, closing the front door beside her and heading towards the cafe across the street. Alone in the room, the body of BJ Narang began to change, and small lesions appeared on his arms. On his face, just under his right eye, a small cut appeared and began to slowly ooze. Poltava, Ukraine, December 3rd, 2308, 7:14 and 16 seconds. T-minus 2 days, 4 hours, 48 minutes, 56 seconds. For his flight to Poltava, Slade chose Back to the Future Part 2, a 300-year-old story about a boy and a doctor who travel to the future and accidentally cause some major changes in the past. It really showed what life was like in 2015. He would have liked to see an actual hoverboard, though. That tech was lost in the Great Fire. The flight was uneventful. He had his own row of seats in first class, the meal was better than most of the airline food, and his holofilm was as great this time as the other 30 or so times he's watched it. That Michael Fox was sure a good actor. They don't act like Nat now, that's for sure. For the remaining time after his holofilm, Slade reviewed what he knew about Ukraine territory and Randy Emery Herman. Slade theorized that Herman would hide in the Carpathian Mountains, so he downloaded skiing and mountain climbing from the plane's skate terminal. Using his subdermal tattoo, Slade altered his face to look more Nordic, blue eyes instead of his green, and fuller lips. He couldn't do anything about his dark hair, but he hoped that it wouldn't matter, that he'd just blend in. The plane landed at Poltava Air Base, or what used to be Poltava Air Base, 15 minutes ahead of schedule. There were no military installations anywhere now, only ruins. Washington had disbanded all armies upon securing office, and now only the principals and iCorps maintained order. The old airbase was now a proper airport, albeit an airport only emissaries and other dignitaries used. The flight had taken 5.5 hours. That was extremely good news. Adding in the 8 hours for the time zone difference, Slade had been traveling for 13.5 hours. He'd lost half a day traveling, but still had 2 days to get to Herman. Coming to the first newsstand in the airport, Slade quickly browsed the papers, headlines revealing nothing, but he cataloged every page into his memory. Perhaps something would be useful later. He approached the customs officials, who saluted him as if he was a 4-star general. His uniform indicated his involvement with the government, the iCorps logo over the left breast of his coat.
There is no need for a salute. Please stand down.
But Colonel General, we are here to help. What do you seek?
Slade pulled the tablet from the pocket of his leather coat.
I am an emissary, not a general in your government. I am looking for this man, Randy Emery Herman. Has he come through this facility?
Randy Emery Herman.
The guards quickly searched the computers, looking for the information Slade had given them.
Not through this terminal, Emissary, but the computer says his documents were scanned in Kiev 2 days ago.
Excellent work, gentlemen. Can you direct me to someone to guide me, who speaks English?
I do, Emissary. My apologies for delaying you. Your speech is flawless.
No apology necessary. What is your name, officer?
Dmytro Kozel, Emissary.
It's a pleasure to meet you, Officer Kozel. Now we must move. Please contact Kiev Airport and see if they have details on Herman's whereabouts.
Kozel was just shy of 6 feet and had dark hair and eyes that were so dark blue, Slade thought they were purple. His pale complexion spoke volumes about the amount of time he had spent indoors. He was slender, and judging by the way he held himself, well-built and active. He instantly bent to the task, eyes scanning left and right as his fingers clacked keystrokes into the terminal. He paused for a moment and then activated his chronometer, calling for assistance. As he did, Slade looked at his chronometer. 2 days, 4 hours, 27 minutes, 6 seconds. If he could find his whereabouts today, Herman stood no chance. It took Dmytro less than 2 minutes to discover that Kiev had no information on Herman other than that he passed through the terminal. This was going to be harder than he thought, but Slade had resources of his own. Slade lifted his chronometer to his mouth.
Voice activate. Emissary 0247893. Call home.
A computer voice chirped from the device.
Voice activation confirmed. Dialing. Please wait.
The sound transferred from the chronometer to an implanted receiver in his left ear. When the voice came to the line, it was tinny, far away.
Emissary 0247893. This is Control. How can we be of assistance?
I need to track a target. Identity, Randy Emery Herman. Last seen at Kiev Airport over 24 hours ago. Initiate retinal and fingerprint scanners in Ukraine territory and report.
Emissaries were able to commandeer any resources required of them in performing their tasks. Retinal scanners were installed in every traffic light, ABM, and washroom mirror around the world. If Herman was still in the Ukraine territory, they'd find him.
That request will take some time, Emissary. We shall report back to you as soon as we have results.
Thank you, Control. 0247893, out.
Slade turned to Kozel.
We'd better get to Kiev. It's as good a starting point as any. How long till we can get there?
Kozel studied the terminal in front of him. A frown flitted across his worn face, but was quickly replaced by a smile.
Emissary, there is a plane from Poltava to Kiev leaving in 15 minutes, and there are 2 seats left. We should be able to secure seats with relative ease, especially with your diplomatic status. Travel time is approximately 55 minutes.
Slade took a quick look at his chronometer.
Make it happen, Kozel.
Kozel punched a few keys on his terminal and nodded in satisfaction.
We go.
Slade smiled. In less than 2 hours, he'd have Herman in his grip. The flight to Kiev was completely uneventful, giving Slade and Kozel ample time to talk. Slade learned that Kozel had 2 kids, an 8-year-old son and a 12-year-old daughter. He had been married for 25 years and had been in the customs department for 20. Life was good for Kozel, and Slade felt that familiar pang, loss of something he'd never have. Kozel asked about his career with iCorps, how Slade liked it and how long he'd been with them. Slade told Kozel enough to be polite, but he certainly didn't give him the whole truth. Slade told him about delivering a letter, how it was a thrill to find the person he had been sent to find, and the sense of pride at accomplishing his job. What Slade didn't tell him was that the first person he had to deliver a letter to was his own mother. Nor did Slade tell Kozel that he wasn't even in the same country to go to her funeral. Slade had received an email 3 days after his mother's death, stating that the cause of death was lung cancer. To say that it was a shock to Slade was the understatement of the decade. His mom had never once smoked, but the coroner, after an autopsy and some research, had pronounced it lung cancer and proceeded to tell Slade in the email that it was a genetic trait in his family and to take precautions for himself. The 55-minute flight was mercifully short. Upon their arrival at Kiev, Slade stopped at a grocer to buy some materials for supper that night. One thing emissaries are good at besides delivering letters is cooking. It keeps their minds off their job, and MK3s are only in the colleges. The regular folks still cook. Slade procured a suite of rooms at a hotel close to the terminal, and while cooking dinner, mentally reviewed the things he knew about Herman, his habits, travel possibilities, and skills he might need. Kozel was watching the news, and by the sound of his jeering at the view screen, Slade guessed that Kozel's favorite sports team had lost. As Slade set the 2 plates of varenki and papushki on the small dining table, his chronometer rang.
Voice activate. Emissary, 0247893. Receive call.
His implant buzzed, and that tinny voice was there again.
Emissary, this is Control. We have the results of the retinal scan you asked for.
Yes, Control. And the results?
We called as soon as we received the results. Retinal scans picked up Randy Emery Herman in Crimea 10 minutes ago. He checked into the hotel I wrote. Suite 214.
Kozel?
Kozel popped his head around the short wall between them, eyebrows raised.
Dinner's ready, but then we must go to the Hotel Agora in Crimea. Herman checked in 10 minutes ago. Let's eat and run. Control, you still with me?
Yes, Emissary. How can we be of service?
If Herman moves anywhere besides that hotel, I need to know immediately. Understand?
Yes, Emissary. We will notify you if there is a change. Control out.
The line went dead. Slade turned to Kozel.
Eat. We leave in 30 minutes.
They crammed their supper into their mouths as fast as they could, cleaned up, then checked out of the hotel.
How fast can we get to Crimea, Kozel?
Kozel paused, deep in thought.
I'm not certain, Emissary. There were 14 airports in Crimea at height of air travel operations. Since the Great Fire, all 14 have ceased operation. The only way into Crimea is by hover. There is not even rail service anymore. Their independence from the rest of the world government has placed travel strains on everyone. even the emissaries.
Right. So we take a hover. How far?
Even at top speed, we are still 10.5 hours from Crimea. I can probably get us to Agora quickly once we are there, but I can't do anything with the travel to Crimea.
Slade looked at his chronometer. It was 23:45. Even if they left in the next 15 minutes, they'd make Crimea just before noon. That was a huge chunk of time. But a letter was a letter, and it had to be delivered.
Well then, we better get moving. We don't have all week.
Siam, December 3rd, 2308, 0600 and 5 seconds. Hotaru groaned as the alarm on her chronometer sounded. Was it morning already? She had turned in at 2100 per regulation and had fallen asleep quickly. That meant almost 9 hours of sleep. Why was she so groggy? She pushed herself from her bed, walking in her tank top and exercise shorts to the washroom to shower. Retinal scanners in her room activated lights as she entered the room and turned them off as she left. Her shower was already running, set at her preferred temperature of 41 degrees. She disrobed and entered the steaming shower. She washed quickly and exited the shower, toweling dry and dressing in a simple black kimono. Walking into the kitchen, she found her breakfast of eggs, toast, and fresh fruit waiting in the MK3. It was only missing her glass of orange juice, which she ordered upon removal of the plate from the machine. Plate and glass in hand, she headed to the table to eat.
Activate viewing screen. Channel 1622.
The screen flared to life and changed from a nature scene to the local news. In other news, prominent businessman B.J. Narang was found dead in his home Thursday morning by his daughter. Officials do not suspect foul play, and the coroner is listing the cause of death as cancer. Narang is widely known for creating the Panasung Company, which manufactures implantable tracer chips for livestock. Clinical trials began this week on penal territory inmates. Narang's death will certainly halt the continuation of the trials, but having 1/3 of the inmates tagged, data collection will begin next week. Sources from Panasung say they will try and get Narang's work back up and running as soon as possible. Hotaru smiled to herself. Another job well done. Scooping the last bite of eggs into her mouth, she picked up her plate and placed it in the recycling terminal next to the MK3. Ensuring the seal was closed on the recycler, she headed back into the bedroom, changed into her workout gear. It was time to prepare for the next letter. Dressed in her leotard, Hotaru Kogame, Beta 0256773, walked into the gym. They had set the equipment up exactly like she had asked. It had taken her almost 2 weeks to convince her instructor that this routine would help her in delivering letters. Even after convincing him, her instructor had to get permission from his superior before allowing Hotaru to attempt this crazy feat. It had taken the college staff almost 2 hours to position each piece of equipment to Hotaru's exacting specifications. She adjusted her leotard and walked to her starting place at the far end of the floor exercise mat. She looked quickly around to make sure no one was watching, and then closed her eyes, seeking her mental center. After 3 deep breaths, Hotaru took off in a fast sprint towards the center of the mat, diving forward into a roundoff, followed by 3 backflips. Her impressive momentum carried her onto the adjacent springboard, where she flew high over the horse, executing several twists and turns in the air. As gravity took hold and she began to fall, she extended her arms forward to grab the bar on the high side of the uneven bars. Hotaru's body carried her into a series of 4 full rotations over the bar, and as she slowed down, she began a full routine, including changes from bar to bar while rotating, turning handstands, and a Corbett flip from the high to low bar, where she did 2 more full rotations. At the zenith of the second rotation, she tucked her knees to her chest and then thrust her feet straight out in front of her, creating tremendous momentum. As she swung under the bar and headed for the top again, she released and flew across a short distance to a standalone high bar. The high bar, traditionally a men's-only apparatus, merely served as a stepping stone for Hotaru. Using full rotations to gain velocity, she once again flung herself through the air. Her body shot in a feet-first beeline to the last piece of equipment she had set up for herself. The 2 rings stood still as a final challenge in this ultimate routine. With all the momentum she had built, the biggest challenge she had now was to keep the ring apparatus stable. Her hands found the rings, and gripping them tightly, she allowed her body to go limp. She hung as dead weight and brought her breathing under control as the apparatus swung slowly to a stop. Summoning all the reserve she had, she pulled herself up, bringing her hands to waist level. Her shoulder muscles bulged and rippled from the strain, and she exhaled slowly as she lowered herself into the Iron Cross. Recognized as one of the most difficult skills on the rings, the Iron Cross stood as a symbol of sheer strength. Despite her athleticism, Hotaru clenched her teeth as she fought both her tired muscles and gravity to hold the position in this final challenge. As the pain in her muscles increased, Hotaru slowed her breathing and once again found her mental center, all the while counting mentally in her head. She had 10 seconds left to go.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
She did one final handstand on the rings, a testament to her mental control, and then executed a quadruple somersault dismount, landing solidly on the mat below. As the final sounds of her landing echoed in the gymnasium, she took 2 deep breaths and smiled. She had done it. She bent, grasping her towel, and began to dab at her forehead. The sound of applause stopped her dead in her tracks. She spun around to see the source of the applause. It was her instructor. She bowed in respect.
Leoshi, what are you doing here?
You have no need to fear me, Beta 0256773. I was here only to make sure you did not injure yourself. Instead, you have amazed me.
Thank you, Leoshi. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to do it, but I could not reach this potential without trying.
And so you have succeeded. As with all of your studies, you continue to excel. You will make a fine alpha one day, 0256773.
It was as close to enthusiastic praise as she would ever get. In the final stages of her routine, Hotaru was suspended in the Iron Cross. In the years perfecting this move, she was now holding the position for 60 seconds, a feat she was sure no one else can do.
3, 2, 1.
She swung through her final movements and dismounted, with only a single flip and a slightly sloppy landing due to a previous knee injury. She grabbed her towel and began to dry off. No applause this time, as the college's gym was empty. It was always empty. Hotaru dropped her towel and reached down to pick up her headband.
Lights off.
The room became instantly dark. Affixing the headband over her eyes, she stood in the center of the room, arms limply at her sides, breathing slowly. She brought her left leg slightly out, raising her hands in the part the wild horse's mane form. Flowing slowly, she passed through white crane, brushed knee, and play the lute in her progression through her 24-form Tai Chi routine. Everything was completely still in the room except for Hotaru's graceful moves. Over the next 4.5 minutes, Hotaru flowed through her routine, seeking center and mastering her breathing. She finished the first set of forms and accelerated into a faster, more aggressive set based on combat styles. She executed with flawless precision, sometimes coming within 5 centimeters of equipment as she moved through the forms. She ended with crossed hands and closing, and slowly removed her headband. It was soaking wet.
Lights on.
The lights slowly came on, and Hotaru could see a flashing red light on her tablet. She had work again. Walking back to her dwelling, she accessed the tablet's memory to find out her mission. Thank you for listening to Episode 2 of Twilight, Book 1 of the Meechan Chronicles. Hope you enjoyed what you're hearing so far. We'd love to hear your feedback. Check out our new website at meechanchronicles.com. Join the forum, hang out with the cast, and get all your questions answered. See you again soon. Episode 3 launches April 15th, 2014. Don't forget to check out Twilight, the ebook, at your favorite ebook retailer.